On the early morning of February 18, 2022, on a stretch of Interstate 41 in Wisconsin, the bone-chilling cold of winter wasn't the only thing making a driver feel uneasy. As she was driving, she suddenly heard a series of sharp, clattering noises coming from her vehicle. Pulling over to inspect, she discovered a series of small dents on her car, looking as though they were caused by BB gun shots. Road rage had long been a growing concern that made drivers feel anxious on the roads. However, it was rare for anyone to imagine that someone would use an air gun to express their anger. Typically, road rage manifests in loud honking, a few shouted curses, or at worst, some dangerous swerving. But this incident went far beyond what anyone would have expected. When the 911 call came in on the cold morning of February 18, 2022, officers from the Wisconsin State Patrol and Grand Chute Police likely expected it to be just another routine driver dispute. But what they discovered at the scene turned out to be a much stranger story. A car with numerous small dents on its body, signs of BB gun fire from an air rifle. These clues quickly led them to a peculiar suspect, a man who not only owned an AK-47 style BB gun, but also had a long list of poor decisions in his life. This case drew attention not only for the irrational and dangerous behavior of the suspect, but also for the humor and oddity in how he expressed his frustration. A BB gun, albeit a toy, in the hands of an angry person had become an instrument of road rage, albeit in an unexpected way. For the investigating officers, this was not just another routine case, but a stark reminder of how uncontrolled emotions could lead to situations so unbelievable that no one could have predicted them. As the officers from the Wisconsin State Patrol arrived at the scene, the faint early morning light pierced through the cold mist, illuminating the victim's car. On its body, a series of small dents, all similar in size, stood out as undeniable evidence of a strange attack. One officer bent down, his gaze focused as if searching for answers from the cold marks. His hand gently traced each dent, feeling the surface to determine whether it was caused by a collision or a weapon. "BB gun, right?" he asked, his voice deep in thought, yet unable to hide his curiosity. His partner shook his head, his expression half serious, half humorous. "Maybe," he replied, emphasizing each word as if weighing the possibility. "But who on earth would be crazy enough to use a kid's toy to cause trouble on the road?" The comment left them in a brief silence. They exchanged looks, their faces reflecting the absurdity of the situation. Still, they couldn't deny that sometimes reality is stranger than fiction. These thoughts soon gave way to duty as they began collecting evidence, preparing for a long day ahead, filled with unanswered questions. The victim, despite her efforts to calm down, couldn't hide the tremble in her voice as she recounted the incident. Her speech faltered, sometimes choked with a mix of fear and frustration. What happened on that stretch of road wasn't just a minor altercation. It was a terrifying experience that would be impossible for her to forget. She began to describe the suspect's car with clear details, a striking bronze sedan, but not in a positive way. It had no license plates, and the windows were so dark you couldn't see inside, she said, her eyes still haunted by the memory. It was like something straight out of a detective movie, the kind of car only a villain would drive. She paused for a moment, took a deep breath to steady herself, then concluded with a voice full of certainty, though still betraying a trace of fear. "It was definitely someone not to be trusted." Her words seemed to linger in the air, creating a heavy atmosphere that even the experienced officers could feel. This was no ordinary case. The officers took in the information from the victim with a mix of confusion and amusement, both puzzled by the motive behind the suspect's actions and chuckling at the bizarre nature of the situation. A BB gun shooting on the freeway, in the biting cold of a Wisconsin winter, sounded more like a prank than a serious crime. However, the danger of the situation couldn't be dismissed. Reckless actions like this didn't just threaten lives, they reflected a lack of judgment and a strange need to attract attention at any cost. As the case was reported, the police immediately began their investigation, and things quickly became clearer thanks to modern traffic cameras. Within minutes, footage from the cameras led authorities to a quiet suburban neighborhood. The suspect's bronze sedan was spotted parked neatly in front of a house. On the screen, two men appeared, one standing casually beside the car, as if he were just passing by. The other was fumbling with the car, his movements clumsy and awkward, as if he were handling a hot potato. "That's definitely the car we're looking for," one officer exclaimed, watching the video intently. His voice mixed curiosity with a hint of sarcasm. "But I'm not sure if these guys are dangerous or just the worst BB gun enthusiasts in the world." The atmosphere in the monitoring room grew more lively as the officers alternated between amusement at the absurdity of the situation and the realization that there might be more to this case than they had originally thought. What seemed like an oddball story was gradually unfolding like an intriguing opening chapter of an investigation that promised more surprises. The context became even more interesting and tense as the officers began to analyze the situation in more detail. A car with no license plates, dark windows, and two men acting suspiciously, these were all signs that couldn't be ignored. These details, which seemed trivial at first, were rapidly revealing that this wasn't just a routine traffic incident or a simple mishap. Everything pointed to one big question: was this the sign of a dangerous plot, professional criminals trying to cover up their crime, or was it just a ridiculous story with a truth that would far exceed anyone's imagination? In the officers' minds, scenarios began to quickly unfold, making the situation even more complex. They couldn't help but think of tense, high-stakes possibilities. Would they face a dangerous gunfight with malicious actors, or would it turn into a bizarre confrontation with someone who was just causing trouble in a ridiculous way? Each situation could take an unexpected turn, from dramatic chases to unbelievable moments that might even make the officers laugh. However, the key factor was the appearance of the controversial BB gun, an item that seemed harmless at first but had now become the focal point of the investigation. Was it just a toy, or could it be a sign of a serious crime being concealed? As the officers approached the scene, their excitement grew. They weren't just dealing with a typical case, but one that could completely reshape their expectations of a criminal incident. They were sure that regardless of the outcome, the appearance of that BB gun would make the entire team rethink how they handle similar situations in the future. When they got closer to Travis, the proud owner of the shady bronze sedan, he looked like he was auditioning for a role in the show America's Dumbest Criminals. His confused expression, combined with an utterly misplaced sense of confidence, created a hilariously contradictory scene. "I don't know what you guys are talking about," he stammered, his words unfocused and unconvincing, only making the situation more ridiculous. This wasn't his first run-in with the law, but this time it seemed luck wasn't on his side. Meanwhile, sitting in the back seat of his car, an AK-47 style BB rifle sat proudly, fully visible and blatantly out in the open. It wasn't even trying to hide. It looked as though it had been cast in a low-budget action film, desperately trying to make an impression, but failing spectacularly. Not only was it just a toy gun, but it also became a symbol of misguided danger, since no one could truly see the threat it posed. The BB gun wasn't concealed. It seemed almost eager to be noticed, serving as a testament to Travis's lack of criminal intelligence. The officers couldn't help but see the irony of the situation, and some had to stifle their laughter. One officer, unable to contain his disbelief, asked dryly but with a touch of sarcasm, "So, that's a fully automatic BB gun?" He tried to maintain a serious expression, but his lips were curling up in a barely suppressed smile. Travis, now completely caught off guard, responded with visible confusion, his eyes darting around as though searching for a believable excuse. "It's just for shooting squirrels," he muttered, his justification so absurd it could only deepen the awkwardness. The way he said it, as if owning an AK-47 style BB gun was just another normal part of everyday life, made the whole situation even more ironic and comedic. Travis's response quickly became an example of just how ridiculous suspects can be in criminal cases. It wasn't just the bizarre reason for using an automatic BB gun to shoot squirrels, it was the complete sincerity in his voice. While the officers struggled to maintain their professionalism, Travis seemed completely oblivious to the absurdity of the situation, as though owning a BB gun capable of firing 1,400 rounds per minute was a perfectly rational and ordinary thing. As the officers started to see the sheer illogical nature of Travis's explanation, they couldn't keep a straight face any longer. They were practically entertained, unable to resist laughing at the absurd overconfidence Travis was displaying. One officer, unable to resist, muttered, "Looks like the squirrels in this neighborhood are going to need bulletproof vests," a remark both humorous and sardonic, highlighting the mismatch between Travis's serious demeanor and the absurdity of the situation. It's important to note that Travis not only failed to convince the officers, but he inadvertently made everything even stranger. He seemed completely unaware that his overconfidence was actually increasing their suspicion. His story wasn't just an excuse, it was a creatively illogical tale that left everyone questioning the level of imagination he had used to defend his actions. In fact, Travis's excessive confidence only made the whole thing more ridiculous and comical. As the officers delved deeper into Travis's background, they quickly discovered a long list of offenses, though certainly not of the kind anyone would celebrate. Each charge on his criminal record wasn't just a minor mistake. It was a series of poorly thought-out decisions, ranging from drug possession to driving with a suspended license. It seemed like Travis had tested every possible way to land himself in trouble, as if he were competing in a contest to rack up the most charges. The officers couldn't help but shake their heads at his lengthy criminal history, and one couldn't resist the sarcastic remark, "He's like a Picasso of poor decisions." Travis insisted that he didn't deserve a heavy punishment for what he called a harmless prank, yet the court disagreed, refusing to treat his reckless road rage incident as anything less than a serious crime. What had started as a fleeting moment of frustration behind the wheel now stood as a stark reminder of the consequences of letting anger drive one's actions. The sentence, the court asserted, wasn't just a form of retribution. It was a clear deterrent, aimed at preventing similar acts of reckless behavior in the future. As the trial unfolded, the public was reminded that even seemingly small actions, like misusing a tow gun in a moment of road rage, could lead to significant legal consequences, especially when such actions jeopardize the safety of others. The court's decision underscored the reality that what might seem like a trivial act could spiral into something much more dangerous when the wrong choices are made at the wrong time. It also revealed how a single lapse in judgment can reshape a person's future in ways they never expected, highlighting the importance of considering the far-reaching effects of our actions, no matter how small they may seem at the time. Travis's criminal record, already peppered with offenses like drug charges and driving without a license, added another layer of irony to the situation. This time, however, the stakes were higher. Not only was he facing charges for reckless endangerment and property damage, but the nature of the weapon involved, the BB gun, further highlighted the absurdity of the entire situation. The AK-47 style BB rifle, though not a real firearm, was still a weapon capable of causing fear, distress, and potential harm. In fact, it was this very tow gun that had escalated the entire situation to the point where Travis now found himself confronting serious legal consequences. His defense, that it was just a prank, might have sounded lighthearted, but it revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of the severity of his actions. It was as if Travis couldn't comprehend that even something as seemingly insignificant as a BB gun could wreak havoc, both physically and psychologically. His casual dismissal of the situation, claiming he had no anger to manage, only served to show his lack of respect for the law and the harm his reckless behavior had caused. He treated it as a minor misunderstanding, not fully grasping the potential consequences his actions had on another person's life. That the judge didn't share his sense of humor. With a stern and unwavering expression, she handed down a nearly 2-year sentence in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. The sentence, though it might have been harsh in Travis's eyes, reflected the gravity of his actions, and it sent a clear message. There would be no tolerance for actions that endanger others, no matter how trivial they may seem at first glance. The judge's words were powerful. "A BB gun may look like a toy," she said, her gaze unyielding, "but when used irresponsibly, it can cause real harm emotionally and physically, both to the victim and to society." Her statement not only reinforced the seriousness of Travis's behavior, it also served as a warning about the dangers of treating any weapon, real or fake, as inconsequential. The psychological scars left on the victim were far from trivial, and the court made it clear that this kind of reckless behavior would not be tolerated. For Travis, this was a sobering lesson in the consequences of unrestrained anger. What might have started as a momentary impulse had now become a life-altering event. His seemingly small actions had led to big consequences, and the court's decision was a reminder that, in the eyes of the law, there's no such thing as a harmless mistake when it comes to endangering the lives of others. The ruling wasn't just a legal judgment, it was a profound reminder that even the smallest of actions, when driven by impulsive emotions, can set in motion a series of events that change lives. In a world where impulse often guides behavior, it's crucial to remember that every choice, no matter how seemingly insignificant, carries weight. As the judge pointed out, freedom of action doesn't mean freedom from responsibility. And in the end, it is our ability to control our actions, to think before we act, that determines the course of our lives and the lives of those around us. Meanwhile, the victim of Travis's outburst was left to deal with the psychological aftermath. The fear instilled in her by the BB gun incident lingered long after the confrontation. Every time she saw a car with dark-tinted windows or a bronze sedan, her heart raced, and her hands trembled uncontrollably. The fear had become so ingrained in her that it affected every aspect of her daily life. It wasn't just the sight of a similar vehicle that triggered the panic, it was the act of driving itself, a once routine activity now filled with anxiety. The emotional toll of that single encounter was something she would struggle with for a long time, underscoring the profound and lasting impact of Travis's actions. This ultimately led her to give up her beloved delivery job, the one she had always been passionate about, because she could no longer bear the anxiety of facing the highways. The issue was not just the psychological trauma the victim had to endure. The incident also left significant material damage, as her car's value dropped dramatically. The dents and damage, although not severe, were enough to strip the vehicle of both its aesthetic and functional integrity. She not only had to deal with the costs of repairs and fixing the damages, but also the additional expenses of regular inspections to ensure the safety of her car. This left her feeling powerless, as repairing the vehicle became not just an expensive task, but also a painful reminder of the unfortunate event that had taken place. To recover from these losses, the victim sought $20,000 in compensation, not only to repair her car, but also to cover the psychological therapy costs she needed to recover from the trauma. This amount not only reflected the material damage, but also represented her attempt to reclaim justice for everything she had gone through. While the emotional cost of the pain she endured could not be measured in monetary terms, the compensation would at least help her move forward and regain peace in her life. When the court ruled that she would receive $44,000 in compensation, part of her felt surprised, but it was not the relief one might expect. She could not truly feel reassured by that number, because for her, money could never soothe the psychological wounds the incident had left. Although the ruling could be seen as a recognition of the damages she suffered, it's also served as a reminder of the unfairness she had been forced to endure. With a wry smile, she remarked, "No matter what, I'll never trust anyone buying tows from the tow gun shop again." The seemingly simple statement carried a deep sense of bitterness. It wasn't just a jab at the absurdity of the situation she had gone through, but also a way for her to confront the painful reality she had to accept. Her words reflected a sharp, cynical mockery of life, where even seemingly harmless situations could turn into terrifying nightmares. It was disappointment, not only with the perpetrators of the incident but also with a society she now felt she could no longer trust. Her words could also be interpreted as a form of emotional self-defense, a way to maintain her dignity in an unchangeable situation. It demonstrated her resilience, as instead of succumbing to the pressure of the injustice, she chose to mock it, creating a protective layer around her emotions to prevent the brutal truth from crushing her. However, behind that sarcastic smile lay loneliness, a loss of faith in things that once seemed simple, and a past that she could never forget. The incident was not just a simple event in the victim's life, but had left an indelible mark, one almost immeasurable, in her mind and life. The BB gunshot wounds, though not life-threatening, brought immense psychological damage. This emotional shock not only forced her to face the fear of driving but also made her battle a range of anxiety, stress, and a loss of faith in the safety of situations she once took for granted. This incident disrupted not only her work and daily life, but also turned every regular activity into a challenge. Every trip, even just to the store or to work, became an anxiety-ridden journey. She could not stop thinking about that bronze-colored car, the sense of losing control, and the threatening feeling she couldn't shake off. However, she didn't allow herself to sink into sadness. With the support of family and friends, who stood by her and shared her emotional burden, she found the strength to continue living. In addition, therapy sessions helped her slowly confront and process the deep fears she had. By understanding the root causes of her anxiety and learning to control her emotions, she began to recover and gradually return to social activities. Though her road to recovery was still long and difficult, she did not give up hope. She believed that one day, she would be able to feel safe on the wide roads again, no longer worrying about the unexpected dangers lurking behind every strange vehicle. While the emotional scars remained, she knew that each day was a step closer to full recovery, a step closer to freedom and peace of mind. In a surprising turn of events, Travis decided to appeal, showing his determination not to accept the consequences of his actions. With a serious face, he stood before the court and declared, "I didn't endanger anyone. It was just a BB gun." This defense, though seemingly simple and unconvincing, actually reflected a clear rejection of responsibility. Travis attempted to downplay the severity of his actions by focusing on the harmless nature of the BB gun, a tool often seen as innocuous by many. However, the truth was not always as simple as that. It was the thoughtlessness and lack of control in using the BB gun that led to the serious incident. Travis had not only endangered the victim, but had also disrupted her life, leaving lasting consequences for her mental health and career. His defense was not just an excuse for his actions, but an effort to minimize the guilt he had to bear. Through Travis's defense, we can see a common psychological phenomenon: the denial of responsibility and the tendency to blame the event, the circumstances, or even the severity of the actions. Travis, like many people in similar situations, attempted to downplay the seriousness of his actions in front of both the public and the legal system. His argument that he didn't deserve such a harsh punishment for what he claimed was just a harmless prank reflected a deep misunderstanding of the gravity of his actions. This defense strategy, however, highlighted a critical issue. Often, it is the lack of self-awareness and the tendency to self-justify that exacerbates the situation rather than alleviates it. The attempt to trivialize the incident, minimizing the consequences, using a BB gun in a fit of road rage, ignored the very real dangers that such reckless behavior posed to public safety. The prosecution, however, was not easily swayed by the defense's reasoning. They quickly pointed out that while a BB gun might seem harmless on the surface, its use in a moment of road rage could have dire consequences. When a person is driving in normal conditions and suddenly faces an unexpected attack, they cannot distinguish whether the weapon is real or a toy. A prosecutor firmly emphasized during the trial, all they feel in that moment is fear, the danger looming right in front of them, and the threat to their safety. This assertion brought attention to the psychological toll that such an act could take on the victim. How an innocent driver, startled and terrified by an unprovoked attack, could experience lasting emotional trauma. The prosecutor continued to explain that in a society where every action can have a profound psychological impact, the mere act of using a tow gun in such a scenario could lead to mental and emotional scars that linger far beyond the moment. The feeling of being threatened, even by a BB gun, could trigger a panic response, pushing the victim into a state of shock, potentially causing accidents, or worse, endangering lives. From a legal perspective, this was far from a harmless joke. It was an act of recklessness, one that placed the safety and well-being of others at risk. The prosecution emphasized that the emotional distress caused by the event and the subsequent fear and panic experienced by the victim were just as real as any physical harm caused by a traditional weapon. This is what made Travis's actions so dangerous and, ultimately, what escalated the seriousness of the case. In trying to downplay the incident as a mere prank, Travis overlooked a crucial point: the law doesn't take lightly any behavior that endangers public safety, regardless of whether the weapon used is real or not. The prosecution's argument aimed to show the court that the emotional and psychological consequences of Travis's actions could be just as damaging, if not more so, than any physical injury. By taking a broader view of the situation, they hoped to illustrate that the gravity of his actions went beyond the mere use of a tow gun, focusing instead on the fear, distress, and potential for real harm his actions created. And somewhere, in a quiet forest, there might be a squirrel who, after surviving countless hunts and near-death experiences, might silently nod in agreement with Travis's absurd justification. In the squirrel's tiny world, perhaps it understands that life is often an unfair battle, much like Travis's attempts to excuse his actions. But despite whatever sympathy the squirrel might feel, the court of law has no room for the understanding of woodland creatures. The truth is, in the face of justice, no one escapes the scrutiny of the law, whether human or animal. The courtroom is the only place where limits are set, where excuses are not tolerated, and where the only currency that holds value is justice and responsibility. The notion of mercy or forgiveness from the weak in the natural world has no place in the legal world. Travis, still firm in his belief that he didn't deserve such a harsh punishment for a harmless prank, continued to insist that his actions, though impulsive, were not malicious. He maintained that he had acted out of anger in the heat of the moment, not with any ill intent. However, the court saw things differently. To them, the incident was not a harmless joke but a dangerous act that threatened public safety. Using a BB gun in a moment of road rage while driving was not a thoughtless action, it was one that could lead to serious consequences, potentially endangering the lives and health of innocent people on the road. The sentence Travis received was not merely a punishment for his actions, it served as a deterrent. The court hoped that this ruling would send a clear message to others who might be tempted to act similarly in the future. Rash actions driven by anger or impulse can lead to much more serious consequences, and they may realize what might seem like a harmless joke can quickly escalate into something dangerous that harms others and disrupts society. As the trial continued, the public was reminded of an important lesson. Even seemingly small actions, like using a tow gun recklessly, can lead to severe legal consequences. This is particularly true, and those actions put the safety of others in jeopardy, even if the intent was merely to express frustration in a moment of anger. This raises important questions about personal responsibility, the need to control one's emotions, and the potential harm we can inflict on others and the community in moments of unchecked rage.